Welcome to Leadership Unveiled. I'm your host, Kayla Fahey-Ahrndt. This show pulls back the curtain on what leadership looks and feels like through discussing a wide variety of topics, from mindset, strategy, to all the tools you need to define what success looks like for you. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get started. Hey everyone, thanks for being here listening to today's episode of Leadership Unveiled. I'm Kayla Fahey-Ahrndt. I am your host, and today's topic is going to be focused around 3 questions to find clarity, and I'm going to be talking through Life's Messy, Live Happy, Cy Wakeman's brand new book. I cannot wait to share these questions with you. I've talked a little bit about these questions on the podcast before. So if you haven't listened to episode 23, What Do I Know For Sure? Navigating Life with Our Ego, definitely go check it out. It's back from January of 2020. It's a 15-minute, 52-second podcast episode, so pretty short and sweet. It's wonderful for your drive into work. And so I'm going to be expanding on that question of what do I know for sure and giving you 2 more questions from Cy's book on how to find clarity. So let's get started. So Cy Wakeman she was previously a human resources person in healthcare, which is really cool. So I know a lot of you that listen are in healthcare, you're in nursing, you're in laboratory, whatever that may be. Some of you are in HR. And that just always makes me feel good because whenever I read Cy's stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, she gets it, right? Because she used to be in healthcare. So number 1, I love that. She always gives healthcare tips or related examples. So if you're not following her on LinkedIn, that's where I would go because she posts a lot of stuff on there, videos, short snippets, and she's often talking about this new book, Life's Messy, Live Happy. So she wrote this during the pandemic and it recently came out. I'm not sure how I heard about it, but I ended up just purchasing it right away, and I'm a few chapters in, and I just couldn't wait to share with you these questions because the questions that Cy shares, this is pretty much what she's known for. So like I said, she used to be in HR and healthcare, and now she is a drama researcher, and she has a wonderful coaching business and goes around and does talking events and speaking. And she really talks about reality-based thinking. That's sort of her niche and sort of her method, if you will, reality-based thinking. So you can already tell from the question, what do I know for sure? That's to try to help you understand your reality. So let me give you these 3 questions. So these 3 questions are, what do I know for sure? How can I help? And what would great look like in this situation? So if you are in a situation where you're really struggling, maybe you have anxiety about something, or you're just in a negative spiral, you just can't find a positive thought. You are thinking the worst case scenario. A lot of us think in black and white, everything is great or everything is horrible, right? It doesn't have to be that way. So if you find yourself needing to figure out, I've got to figure out an answer to a problem, or I need to figure out what are the next steps that I can take so I can feel like I have some control over this situation, or I am just in such a negative place. How do I get out of that? So that negative place, Cy calls it your lower self. And these 3 questions to help you find clarity are how to get you to highest self. So in the book, she says, these questions have been my gifts from my highest self in times of need. I want them to be my gift to you. So talking through those questions, knowing that background, what do I know for sure? So she talks about how this reveals your story. So that story that we're telling ourselves, right? Everything is terrible. I made a big mistake. I'm never coming back from this, the worst case scenario. When you ask this humble curiosity question of, what do I know for sure? This is your way of getting back to reality-based thinking, and it can loosen your ego's grip. She tells us that it almost always reveals a less harsh reality. So like I said, this story you're telling yourself is usually super extreme, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, this is terrible. And instead of that, when you say, what do I know for sure? You're like, okay, so I made a mistake. Big whoop, right? Or I'm feeling bad about this because, or, this XYZ happened. I'm tired. I'm hungry, right? Like I had a bad day. Today was a bad day. That doesn't mean my entire life is bad, right? So it kind of helps you stop catastrophizing. Is that a word? Basically, and helps you find your real true story, and it's usually less harsh than that story that you're telling yourself. The second question is, how can I help? So she says in the book that this gets you out of victim mode and into the role of co-creator or a compassionate contributor. So Cy also has this wonderful quote that I love that really demonstrates this question. It's stop judging, start helping. And I feel like you can use this whether you're talking about yourself, judging your own thoughts, like, oh, I'm horrible for thinking this, I'm never coming back from this, or other people too, right? Like, oh, they're just doing a terrible job, I could do it better. That's your ego, right? So when you ask, how can I help? You're toggled up into the higher self because you're in curiosity mode. You're like, what could I do? Like, how could I actually start digging in and helping myself or helping other people? So instead of judging myself or others, now I'm going to solutions. I'm like, hey, maybe I could apologize. Hey, maybe I could ask for feedback. Hey, maybe I could lend a hand. Hey, maybe I could ask like, hey, what's going on? So I love this question because it works, like I said, for yourself. How can I help myself? Or how can I help others? So what do I know for sure? How can I help? The third question is, what would great look like in this situation? So Cy says this for her is liberation because it lets you know that your external circumstances don't drive your decisions or actions. You can live your values out loud and with integrity and live your purpose with intention instead of reaction. So for me, when I think about this, living in your values and with integrity, you're talking about living purposefully. And you're talking about what's the best version of me? What's the best version of you? Like what would the best version of Kayla do in this situation? What would the greatest thing look like? And I've also heard other people say like, what's the most beautiful story that you could tell in this situation, right? So you've got this negative spiral. You've tried to figure out like, what do I actually know about this? How could I help? And then what would great look like? If this story had a beautiful ending, what would that be? And so I think that's just a really cool question to help you have that more reflective state, that more humble curiosity, rather than that lower self negative spiral. So for example here, say you're upset with somebody because they were, not very nice to you. Right? Like just a very simple example. This happens all the time. What would great look like? Well, maybe great would look like taking some ownership or accountability for part of that conversation. Maybe it would be taking that first step and saying, you know what, I'm going to say I'm sorry first. I'm going to apologize first, even if I'm waiting for an apology on my end, right? So it's what would great look like here? And I just love this because, again, this gets you away from that ego's grip, like I could do it better, or, they got to apologize to me, or you know what, I'm just terrible and I'm never coming back from this. And it really flips that mindset like, how can I prevail and feel super good about the next steps that I take instead of feeling really icky? So I hope you check out Cy's book, Life's Messy, Live Happy, and think about these 3 questions. For me, when I need to get out of that lower self and into higher self, I don't just think about these questions. One thing that's really helpful for me is to journal on them. So you can just take a piece of paper, whether it's just like a notebook pad and piece of paper or your digital journal or planner, and write question number 1, what do I know for sure? Just do bullet points right underneath that. 2, how can I help? Just bullet points. 3, bullet points. What do I know? What would great look like in this situation? If you're not able to sit down with a piece of paper, I've also done this in the notes app of my phone. We always have our phones with us. Just straight up do some bullet points or like checklist items in your notes app, and then let them sit there and let them just be. And then you can always come back to your notes and your bullets and reread them after you've given some time to pass for you to sort of cool off or to like let all this information sit on a page. So I just suggest in real life, don't make this list and then go act and, be really emotional when you're taking action, but maybe write down how you would answer these questions, take some time, and then come back to them and see, do you get the same vibes? Do you feel the same way? And every time I've done this exercise, I'm like, oh, I still had some ego in some of those answers, or I still had a lot of emotion in that. I'm going to tune it back and pare it back. And then you start to realize, like, what is the real problem here? What's really going on? And honestly, you just feel so much better when you're toggled up into that higher self. And time helps with that. But it also helps to answer these questions and just get it all out of your system rather than just taking action when you're in that emotional state. So everybody, I hope this short and sweet episode helps you as you're navigating this week. 3 questions to help you find clarity from Cy Wakeman's book, Life's Messy, Live Happy. And again, if you haven't listened to episode 23, What Do I Know For Sure? Navigating Life with Our Ego, check that out. All right, until next time, everyone, take care and be a light.